Hey, welcome back. Today, let's talk about something that can save you thousands and years of stress. Because the truth is, the wrong piece of land can drain your wallet faster than any bad rental deal. Grab a pen and take notes. I've been investing for over 12 years, and I've bought everything from small rural lots to multi-acre parcels. I've made mistakes too, and that's why I'm sharing this. Here's what I'd check before ever putting a dollar into land that might look cheap today, but become a headache tomorrow. Check legal access. I always start by confirming the land has legal, recorded access, not just a visible dirt path or a neighbor's driveway that everyone uses. Title records and county plats tell you if the access is permanent or if it depends on someone else's permission. According to most county assessors, landlocked parcels are among the most undervalued for a reason. Investors can't reliably reach them. Practical verification usually involves reviewing the deed, checking the easement language, and cross-referencing county GIS maps. Legal access means more than just being able to drive to the property today. It means having a documented right to reach the land year-round, regardless of who owns the adjacent parcels. I've seen deals fall apart because buyers assumed informal access arrangements would continue indefinitely, only to find neighbors blocking the road after a dispute or property transfer. These situations can require expensive legal action or force you to negotiate costly easements after you've already purchased. When you verify access, you're looking for specific language in the deed that grants you an irrevocable right-of-way. This might be a public road maintained by the county or a private easement recorded in the property records. Either way, the documentation needs to be clear, permanent, and legally enforceable. I make copies of these documents and keep them with my property files because proving access rights can become critical if you ever need to develop, sell, or defend your ownership. The width of access matters too. Some easements specify a narrow right-of-way that's fine for occasional vehicle traffic, but inadequate for construction equipment or utility installation. If you're planning to build, you need access wide enough to accommodate concrete trucks, well drilling rigs, or septic installation equipment. Checking these details early prevents costly surprises when contractors inform you they can't reach the site with necessary machinery. When you slow down and verify access up front, you avoid paying for land you can't legally enter. This single check has saved me from several deals that looked attractive on paper but would have created years of legal headaches. Access isn't glamorous, but it's foundational. Without it, everything else becomes irrelevant. Next, we need to understand what the area actually allows you to do with the land itself. Verify zoning limits. So before imagining what you'll build, you'll want to confirm exactly what zoning allows. Look, zoning rules can block your plans in a quiet but complete way. Local planning departments publish zoning codes online, and you can usually call them directly to confirm setbacks, minimum lot sizes, and allowable structures. Most investors skip this step because zoning looks complicated, but the truth is it takes 5 minutes to read the permitted uses. Zoning tells you whether you can build residential structures, whether commercial activity is allowed, whether you can subdivide, and what size buildings are permitted. Some zones restrict the number of dwelling units per acre. Others prohibit certain types of businesses or require special permits for home-based work. These restrictions exist in writing, and they're enforced consistently. Ignoring them doesn't make them go away. I always check for overlay districts too. These are additional zoning layers that impose extra requirements, historic preservation rules, environmental protections, or design standards. A property might be zoned residential, but also fall within a scenic overlay that limits building heights or exterior materials. Understanding all applicable zones prevents planning a project that can't get approved. Setback requirements determine how close you can build to property lines, roads, or water features. These measurements directly affect your usable building area. On smaller lots, setbacks can consume a significant percentage of the land, leaving less space than you'd expect for actual construction. I verify setbacks through zoning maps and sometimes call the planning department to confirm measurements for specific parcels. Good investors think in systems. Zoning tells you the boundaries of possibility. It's not about being pessimistic, it's about being realistic. When you understand what's allowed before you buy, you can plan accurately and budget correctly. The alternative is buying land based on hopes and then discovering your plans aren't legally viable. Now, once you know what can be built, The next step is understanding whether the land can physically support it. Evaluate soil and septic. I've done this myself many times. Before committing, I ask whether the ground can support a foundation and whether it can pass a basic PERS test for a septic system. Soil composition can make or break development. According to environmental engineering reports, clay-heavy soils often require additional grading, while rocky soil can increase foundation costs. A simple site visit, combined with county soil surveys, gives you a realistic idea of what you're dealing with. Percolation tests measure how quickly water drains through soil. This matters because septic systems require adequate drainage to function properly. Soil that doesn't percolate well can fail septic approval, forcing you to install expensive alternative systems or abandon building plans entirely. County health departments typically maintain records of past perk tests, which can give you preliminary insight before investing in a formal test. Foundation requirements vary with soil type. Expansive clay soils shift with moisture changes, requiring specialized foundations that cost more than standard construction. Rocky soils may need blasting or extensive excavation, adding thousands to site preparation costs. Sandy or well-drained soils usually offer the best building conditions, but even these require verification through soil borings or test pits. I also check for signs of previous fills or disturbance. Land that was once a dump site, old construction debris field, or industrial area may have contaminated or unstable soil. Visual inspection during a site visit can reveal unusual grading, vegetation patterns, or exposed materials that warrant deeper investigation. Buying contaminated land creates liability that extends far beyond the purchase price. A licensed soil test is an inexpensive check compared to the cost of redesigning an entire build. These tests typically cost a few $100s and provide detailed information about soil composition, bearing capacity, and drainage characteristics. This data helps engineers design appropriate foundations and helps you budget accurately for site work. When you verify the soil early, you turn uncertainty into a clear cost estimate, not a surprise down the road. Soil conditions are permanent, they don't improve with time or hope. Understanding them before you commit protects you from buying land that can't support your intended use without prohibitive expense. From here, we move to one of the most overlooked land risks: water. Look for flood history. I always review flood maps from FEMA or the local disaster agency. Even if a property isn't formally in a flood zone, nearby grading, drainage issues, or seasonal rivers can affect its usability. Local residents and county stormwater reports help you cross-check whether the land holds water after heavy rain. Keep in mind that flood-prone land can dramatically change insurance costs, sometimes adding significant amounts per year depending on region and coverage. Flood zones come in different classifications. High-risk zones require flood insurance if you're financing the purchase, and premiums can run thousands annually. Moderate-risk zones might not require insurance, but still experience flooding under certain conditions. Understanding your exact flood classification helps you budget for insurance and assess whether the land will be usable year-round. I also check elevation relative to nearby water features. Land in valleys or low-lying areas naturally collects runoff. Even if it's not in a mapped flood zone, seasonal flooding can make access difficult or prevent building during wet months. Topographic maps show elevation contours that reveal drainage patterns and help you identify vulnerable areas. Historical flood records tell you what's happened in the past. County emergency management offices maintain records of past flooding events, including dates, depths, and affected areas. Some regions also have community flood histories that residents share informally. These stories provide context official maps might miss, like the creek that only floods every 10 years, but when it does, it cuts off access for weeks. Climate patterns are changing, and some areas experience more frequent or severe flooding than historical data suggests. While you can't predict the future perfectly, understanding current trends helps you assess long-term risk. Properties that flooded rarely in past decades might face increasing frequency going forward. Understanding water behavior helps you avoid land that becomes unusable during half the year. Water doesn't respect property lines, and controlling drainage often requires cooperation from neighbors or expensive engineering solutions. When you verify flood risk early, you make informed decisions rather than discovering problems after heavy rain reveals them. Next, we look at the lifelines of modern development, utilities. Confirm utility options. People underestimate the cost of connecting utilities. I always check how far the nearest power lines, water hookups, and internet connections actually are. Utility companies will often give rough estimates for extension costs, but they vary widely depending on terrain and distance. In rural areas, even a simple power extension can run several $1,000s depending on the provider and road access. Power companies typically charge per foot or per pole to extend service. Distance matters, but so does terrain. Extending lines across steep slopes, wetlands, or heavily wooded areas costs more than running them along existing road corridors. I call utility companies directly and ask for preliminary cost estimates based on the parcel's location. These conversations usually reveal whether connection is straightforward or prohibitively expensive. Water service follows similar logic. If municipal water is available nearby, connection fees might be manageable. If not, you're looking at drilling a well, which introduces uncertainty. Well drilling costs vary with depth, geology, and water quality. Some areas hit water at 50 feet, others require drilling several hundred feet. Well drillers can provide rough estimates based on neighboring properties, but actual costs won't be certain until drilling occurs. Internet connectivity increasingly matters for land value. Many buyers need reliable internet for remote work or simply expect modern connectivity. Rural areas may have limited options: satellite, fixed wireless, or nothing. Checking coverage maps from major providers tells you what's available and what's planned for the area. Land with fiber optic access commands premiums in many markets. Septic systems are common in rural areas, but they're not free. Installation costs vary with soil conditions, system type, and regulatory requirements. Basic gravity systems might cost several $1,000s, while advanced treatment systems or mound systems can cost significantly more. Understanding these costs before purchase helps you budget the full development expense. It's a simple check most investors skip, and it's why cheap land sometimes stays cheap. Land without utilities isn't worthless, but it requires substantial additional investment to become usable. When you know these costs up front, you can negotiate purchase prices that account for the full expense of making land functional. Verifying utilities early turns guesswork into real numbers you can plan around. This clarity separates informed investors from those who discover expensive surprises during the building permit process. Every utility connection that seems minor on a map becomes real when contractors give you quotes. Now let's zoom out and look at the surrounding area, not just the parcel. Study the local market context matters. I study nearby land sales, average price per acre, and how long properties sit before selling. According to recent real estate data, growing markets show steadily increasing sales volume and consistent price ranges, usually within predictable bands depending on region. Local agents, online land platforms, and county records help you verify this. The point is, land doesn't exist in isolation. Its value rises or falls with the community. I pull comparable sales from the past 6 to 12 months, focusing on parcels similar in size, zoning, and location. This data shows whether prices are rising, stable, or declining. Rising prices suggest demand is growing. Maybe population is increasing, jobs are expanding, or infrastructure improvements are planned. Declining prices might signal economic contraction, population loss, or overbuilding. Days on market tells you about liquidity. In active markets, land sells within a few months of listing. In slow markets, properties might sit for years. Understanding typical marketing periods helps you plan exit strategies and avoid tying up capital in illiquid investments. If you might need to sell relatively quickly, buying in a slow market creates risk. I also check for market concentration. Are most sales happening in a specific area or price range? Sometimes one part of a county is booming while another stagnates. Understanding these micro-market dynamics helps you identify where value is really moving and where it's just noise. Price per acre varies significantly with parcel size. Smaller lots often command higher per acre prices because they appeal to individual home builders. Larger parcels attract investors or developers who pay less per acre but offer faster closings and fewer contingencies. Knowing these patterns helps you position your investment appropriately. When you understand the market cycle, you stop guessing and start comparing opportunities with clarity. Market analysis isn't about predicting the future, it's about understanding the present accurately. That understanding gives you confidence when making offers and helps you recognize genuine value versus overpriced listings. Once you see the market picture, the next step is understanding the fine print attached to the land. Review easements and restrictions. You'll want to read every easement, covenant, and deed restriction carefully. Easements can grant utility companies access through your property. Restrictions, especially older ones, can limit what you build, how you build it, or even what materials you use. These documents are usually filed with the county clerk, and they provide a transparent view of your future limitations. Utility easements allow power companies, water districts, or telecommunications providers to install and maintain infrastructure across your land. These easements are permanent and typically prevent you from building structures in the easement area. Wide utility easements can significantly reduce usable space, especially on smaller parcels. Access easements might benefit neighboring properties, giving others legal rights to cross your land. These are common in rural areas where multiple parcels share a private road. While access easements don't necessarily harm your use, they do limit your control and can create maintenance obligations or disputes over road upkeep. Deed restrictions, also called covenants or protective covenants, were often recorded when land was originally subdivided. These might require minimum home sizes, specific architectural styles, or prohibit certain activities like commercial use or livestock. Some restrictions made sense decades ago, but feel arbitrary now. Regardless, they're legally binding until officially removed or proven unenforceable. Homeowner association rules function like deed restrictions but are managed by an active organization. HOAs can impose fees, design standards, and use restrictions. Some are minimal, others are extensive and expensive. Reading HOA documents before purchase prevents surprises about annual fees or construction limitations. Ignoring this step can distort expected ROI or create unexpected delays during development. I've seen investors discover easements that prevented building in the only suitable location on a parcel, or restrictions that prohibited their intended use entirely. These limitations were always there in public records, they just weren't checked until after purchase. Good investors look beneath the surface. Restrictions shape what the land can become. Taking time to review recorded documents might feel tedious, but it's far less frustrating than discovering limitations after you've already invested. Most restrictions are discoverable through straightforward title searches and document reviews. Next, let's talk about environmental clues that signal long-term risk. Check environmental red flags. Environmental risks aren't always obvious. I check whether the land sits near wetlands, protected habitats, or old industrial sites. Environmental maps and state conservation databases provide reliable indicators. For example, land near designated wetlands often requires additional permits that can extend timelines significantly, and contaminated sites may require remediation, a cost that varies widely but can be substantial depending on severity. Wetlands are federally protected, and building near them triggers regulatory review. Even if wetlands aren't directly on your property, proximity matters. Buffer zones can restrict clearing, grading, or construction within certain distances. Wetland determination studies might be required before permits are issued, adding time and expense to any development. Endangered species habitat creates similar complications. If protected species live on or near the property, development might be restricted or prohibited entirely. State wildlife agencies maintain habitat maps that show sensitive areas. Checking these maps early prevents buying land that carries significant environmental constraints. Former industrial sites, gas stations, or agricultural operations might have left soil contamination. Underground storage tanks, pesticide residues, or chemical spills can render land unusable without expensive cleanup. Phase 1 environmental assessments review property history and identify potential contamination risks. These reports cost a few hundred to a few $1,000s, but provide crucial information before closing. Natural hazards like sinkholes, landslides, or subsidence affect certain regions. Geological surveys and local emergency management offices maintain maps showing hazard-prone areas. Land in these zones might be difficult or impossible to insure, and building on unstable ground creates obvious risks. When you verify environmental factors early, risk becomes measurable instead of mysterious. Environmental issues rarely improve on their own, and regulatory oversight generally increases over time. Understanding constraints before purchase lets you decide whether the limitations are acceptable or disqualifying. Now, let's talk about the costs that continue long after you buy the land. Assess maintenance costs. Land isn't maintenance-free. Clearing brush, grading driveways, managing erosion, or even controlling basic overgrowth can add steady yearly costs. In rural areas, maintaining long private roads is a common expense, sometimes a few $100s a year depending on length and condition. I factor these into every investment because they influence the true holding cost of the land. Vegetation management varies by climate and property type. Some regions require regular brush clearing for fire prevention. Others see rapid regrowth that obscures boundaries or creates access problems. Hiring contractors for clearing can run hundreds to thousands of dollars depending on acreage and density. Doing it yourself requires equipment, time, and ongoing commitment. Private road maintenance falls to property owners. Grading dirt roads, filling potholes, managing drainage, and occasionally adding gravel are recurring needs. If multiple property owners share a road, maintenance responsibilities should be clearly documented. Without agreement, road maintenance becomes a source of conflict and inconsistent upkeep. Erosion control matters on sloped properties or near water features. Unchecked erosion can wash away soil, undermine roads, or create gullies that damage usability. Addressing erosion requires engineering solutions, terracing, drainage improvements, or vegetation stabilization. Prevention is cheaper than repair, but both require attention and expense. Property taxes continue whether you're actively using the land or not. Annual tax bills vary widely based on assessed value, local rates, and any special assessments. Some regions offer reduced agricultural assessments if land meets certain criteria, but these require applications and ongoing compliance. Understanding your likely tax burden helps you model holding costs accurately. Insurance costs vary with land characteristics. Properties in wildfire zones, flood areas, or high liability locations carry higher premiums. Even vacant land can benefit from liability coverage in case someone is injured on the property. These costs are modest individually, but compound over years of ownership. Good planning is simply acknowledging the ongoing responsibilities that come with ownership. Land might seem passive, but it requires attention and resources. When you budget for maintenance realistically, you avoid the trap of thinking raw land is a zero-cost hold. Finally, we complete the due diligence loop with the legal backbone of the purchase: verify title and boundaries. Before I ever close on land, I confirm the deed is clean, the title has no liens, and the boundaries match the survey. Title companies can usually provide a full history, and surveys show the exact lines so you don't build or clear on someone else's property. Old disputes or unresolved liens are more common on rural land, so a proper title search is non-negotiable. Title insurance protects against defects in ownership history. The title company researches past transfers, looking for breaks in the chain of ownership, unpaid taxes, outstanding mortgages, or judgments against previous owners. These issues can cloud your ownership or create unexpected financial obligations. Title insurance is a one-time cost that provides permanent protection. Surveys establish exact boundaries through physical measurements and markers. Old surveys might not reflect current conditions if fences have moved or markers have disappeared. Recent surveys, ideally within the past few years, give you confidence about what you're buying. Surveyors place iron pins or monuments at corners, creating visible reference points you can verify during site visits. Boundary disputes are surprisingly common. Neighbors might disagree about fence locations, old verbal agreements, or the meaning of vague deed descriptions. Resolving these disputes can require legal action, new surveys, or quiet title proceedings. Starting with clear surveyed boundaries and good relationships with neighbors prevents most problems. Mineral rights and water rights can be separated from surface ownership. In some regions, previous owners retained rights to subsurface minerals or water usage. These retained rights can limit your control or create situations where others have legal access to your property for extraction. Title searches reveal whether rights have been severed and who currently holds them. This step protects the entire investment. Clean title and clear boundaries give you confidence in what you own and what you control. Uncertainty in ownership creates risk that undermines every other aspect of your investment strategy. Clear boundaries give you clarity, the foundation of every good decision. When you know exactly what you own and can prove it through documentation, you operate from strength rather than hope. Transition to next part. In the next chapter, we'll look at how to compare two parcels of land side by side and decide which one deserves your capital. It's a simple process once you know what numbers matter most, and I'll walk you through each one.